The coffee shop encounter, the autumn rain drummed against the windows of Moonbeam Cafe as Sophia Chen sat in her usual corner booth, 6 fingers wrapped around a ceramic mug that had long since gone cold. At 28, she had the kind of quiet beauty that people noticed but never quite remembered, soft brown hair that caught the light just right, gentle eyes that seemed to hold stories she'd never tell, and a smile she saved for moments when she thought no one was watching. Tonight was different, though. Tonight, she wasn't watching the world go by through rain-streaked glass. Tonight, she was waiting for someone who might never come. The cafe was nearly empty at this hour, just past 9 in the evening. The barista, a college student with purple hair and tired eyes, was already stacking chairs and wiping down tables. The familiar comfort of this place, with its mismatched furniture and walls lined with local artwork, felt more like a sanctuary than ever before. Sophia pulled out her phone for the 100th time, checking for messages that weren't there. The screen showed only her own reflection, pale and worried. She'd been coming to this cafe every Tuesday night for 3 months now, always ordering the same thing: a large coffee with extra cream, a blueberry muffin she'd never finished, and hope that this time would be different. The bell above the door chimed, and she looked up with the same desperate expectation she'd carried for weeks. But instead of the person she'd been waiting for, a tall stranger stepped inside, shaking raindrops from his dark coat. He had the kind of presence that filled a room without trying: broad shoulders, salt and pepper hair, and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Detective James Morrison had been walking these streets for the better part of 2 hours, his mind churning over the case that had consumed his life for the past 6 months. At 35, he'd seen enough of the world's darkness to know that some mysteries were never meant to be solved. But this one was different. This one was personal. He approached the counter, pulling out his wallet with hands that bore the calluses of someone who'd worked with them his whole life before joining the force. The barista looked up hopefully, probably eager to close up and go home to whatever 20-year-olds did on Tuesday nights. "Just a black coffee, please," James said, his voice carrying the slight rasp of someone who'd spent too many years asking difficult questions. "Actually, make that too, whatever pastries you've got left." The girl behind the counter raised an eyebrow but didn't question the odd order. She poured 2 steaming cups and slid them across the counter along with a paper bag filled with leftover muffins and cookies. James paid without counting the change and turned to survey the nearly empty cafe. That's when he noticed her, the woman in the corner booth, who looked like she was carrying the weight of the world in her gentle eyes. Something about her posture, the way she held her phone like a lifeline, struck him as familiar in a way that made his detective instincts prickle. Without overthinking it, he walked over to her table. Sophia looked up as a shadow fell across her space, and for a moment neither of them spoke. There was something in her mixture of disappointment and curiosity that made James reconsider his usual approach to strangers. "Excuse me," he said, his voice softer than usual. "I couldn't help but notice you've been waiting a while. I ordered too much coffee, and I hate to see it go to waste. Would you mind if I joined you?" Sophia blinked, taken aback by the unexpected offer. She'd grown so accustomed to being invisible that having someone actually see her felt almost surreal. "That's very kind, but I'm actually waiting for someone." James nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. "How long have you been waiting?" The question was asked with such gentle directness that Sophia found herself answering before she could think better of it. 3 months. Every Tuesday. Same time, same place. She laughed, but it came out hollow. "I guess that makes me pretty pathetic, doesn't it?" "It's not pathetic," James said, settling into the seat across from her without invitation. "Hopeful? There's a difference." He pushed one of the coffee cups toward her. "Sometimes hope is all we've got to hold on to." There was something about the way he said it, not with pity or judgment, but with the kind of understanding that came from experience, that made Sophia's defenses crumble just a little. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup and really looked at him for the first time. "I'm Sophia," she said quietly. "James." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face from stern to surprisingly gentle. "And if it helps, I've been walking these streets for hours, trying to figure out a problem that's been eating at me for months. Maybe we're both exactly where we need to be. Outside, the rain continued its steady rhythm, but inside the warm glow of Moonbeam Cafe, two strangers began to share the kind of conversation that happens when people have nothing left to lose. Sophia found herself talking about the letters she'd been receiving, anonymous notes that hinted at secrets about her past, or promising answers if she'd just wait at this cafe every Tuesday night. James listened with the focused attention of someone trained to hear what people weren't saying as much as what they were. When she mentioned the letters, something in his expression shifted almost imperceptibly. He'd spent months tracking similar notes, following a trail that had led him through the city's shadows and into its forgotten corners. "These letters," he said carefully, "do they mention anything about a woman named Catherine Winters?" Sophia's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Catherine Winters, the name that had haunted her dreams since childhood, the name her adoptive parents had whispered when they thought she wasn't listening, the name that appeared in every letter she'd received. "How do you know that name?" she whispered. James leaned forward, his detective's mask slipping to reveal something raw and vulnerable underneath. "Because Catherine Winters was my partner, and she disappeared 25 years ago while investigating a case that I think might involve you." The cafe seemed to hold its breath around them. Outside, the rain had stopped, but neither of them noticed. Sophia stared at the stranger who somehow knew the name that had shaped her entire life, while James looked at the woman whose face bore an uncanny resemblance to photos he'd carried in his case files for decades. "I think," James said slowly, "we both need to know the truth about what happened that night 25 years ago. I think someone's been trying very hard to make sure we'd find each other." As the barista finally turned off the last of the lights, leaving them in the gentle glow of street lamps filtering through rain-washed windows, neither Sophia nor James could have imagined that their simple encounter over leftover coffee was about to unravel a mystery that would change everything they thought they knew about their lives. The truth, when it came, would be more extraordinary than either of them could have dreamed. Secrets Unveiled. The old police precinct at midnight felt like a mausoleum of forgotten cases and buried secrets. James Morrison's desk sat beneath a flickering fluorescent light that had been promising to die for the better part of a decade, casting shadows that danced across towers of manila folders and cold coffee cups. Sophia Chen sat in the chair opposite him, her hands folded tightly in her lap as she watched him pull out a box that looked like it had been sealed away from the world for far too long. "Before I show you what's in here," James said, his voice heavy with the weight of years, "I need you to understand something. 25 years ago, I was a different man. Yep. Young, ambitious, and absolutely certain that justice was black and white." He ran a hand through his graying hair. "Catherine Winters taught me that sometimes the most important cases are painted in shades of gray." Sophia nodded, though her heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it in the quiet office. The name Catherine Winters had echoed in her mind during the silent drive from the cafe, pulling up fragmented memories she'd spent years trying to piece together. James opened the box with careful reverence, as if he were handling something sacred. Inside were photographs, newspaper clippings, and evidence bags that had yellowed with age. But it was the letter on top written in familiar handwriting that made Sophia's breath catch in her throat. "She wrote this the night she disappeared," James said, lifting the letter with hands that trembled slightly. "I found it on her desk the next morning, along with these." He gestured to the contents of the box. "For 25 years, I thought she'd run away from a case that got too dangerous. I thought she'd abandoned her partner, her duty, everything we'd worked for." He handed her the letter, and Sophia recognized the elegant script immediately. It was the same handwriting from all those anonymous notes that had brought her to the cafe week after week. Her fingers traced the words as she read aloud. "James, if you're reading this, then I've made a choice that will seem like betrayal. But sometimes love demands sacrifices that duty cannot understand. The girl they call Jane Doe number 47, she's not just another case. She's my daughter." Sophia's voice broke on the last word. She looked up at James, tears blurring her vision. "Your partner, Catherine Winters? She was my mother." James nodded, his own eyes bright with unshed emotion.
"You were found at the scene
"Of what looked like a car accident when you were 3 years old. No identification, no family coming forward to claim you. Catherine was assigned to your case." But something about you, maybe the way you'd hum when you were scared, or how you'd draw pictures of a woman with long dark hair, something made her believe you weren't just a random victim. He pulled out a photograph, faded but unmistakable, a woman with Sophia's eyes and gentle smile, holding a small child who looked exactly like Sophia had in her earliest memories. She spent months investigating, following leads that took her into some very dangerous territory. There were people who didn't want your real identity discovered. Sophia stared at the photograph, and suddenly the pieces of her fractured childhood began to fall into place. The nightmares about running through dark woods, the inexplicable fear of certain sounds, the way she'd always felt like she was living someone else's life. What happened to her? To my real mother, Catherine. James's expression grew dark. She discovered that you weren't the victim of an accident. Were the daughter of Elena Vasquez, a journalist who'd been investigating a human trafficking ring that involved some very powerful people. When Elena got too close to the truth, they made her disappear. You were supposed to disappear too, but Catherine found you first. The room felt like it was spinning around Sophia. Elena Vasquezson, another name that triggered distant memories. This one accompanied by the scent of vanilla perfume and the sound of fingers typing on an old keyboard. So Catherine took me? She kidnapped me? She saved you, James corrected gently. The people who killed your birth mother were still looking for you. Catherine knew that if she went through official channels, you'd end up in the system where they could find you. So she made a choice. She arranged for you to be adopted by a family far away from here, people who would love you and keep you safe. He pulled out another document, this one bearing official seals and signatures. She gave up her career, her life here, everything. She moved to a different state and spent the next 25 years watching over you from a distance, making sure you were safe. Sophia's mind reeled as she processed this information. The letters, the ones that brought me to the cafe. Those were from Catherine? James shook his head. Catherine died 6 months ago. Cancer. But before she passed, she made arrangements for you to learn the truth. She hired a private investigator to deliver those letters, to bring you back here when the time was right. But why now? Why wait? So long? Because, James said, pulling out a final photograph that made Sophia gasp, the man who ordered your birth mother's death was just released from prison on a technicality. Catherine wanted to make sure you knew the truth before he could find you again. The photograph showed a man with cold eyes and a cruel smile, someone who radiated menace even in a simple mugshot. Sophia had never seen him before, but looking at his face filled her with a primal fear that she couldn't explain. His name is Victor Krantz, James continued. 25 years ago, he was untouchable, too connected, too powerful. But Catherine gathered evidence, built a case piece by piece while she watched over you. She left it all to me, along with instructions to find you when the time came. Sophia stood up suddenly, pacing to the window that looked out over the sleeping city. So my entire life has been a lie. My adoptive parents, my name, my identity, none of it was real. Your life was real, James said firmly. The love your adoptive parents gave you was real. The person you became, the kindness in your heart, the strength that brought you back here, looking for answers, that's all real. Catherine made sure you had the chance to become who you were meant to be. He joined her at the window, both of them looking out at the city lights that twinkled like stars fallen to earth. She left something else for you, he said quietly. A video message. She recorded it just before she died. James returned to his desk and pulled out an old laptop, screen flickering to life with the grainy image of a woman who looked remarkably like an older version of Sophia. Catherine Winters sat in what appeared to be a hospital room, her hair thin from treatment, but her eyes bright with fierce love. My dearest Sophia, the recording began, and Sophia gasped at hearing her name spoken in a voice that felt like coming home. If you're watching this, then James has found you, and you know the truth about who you really are. I know this must be overwhelming, and I'm sorry for the secrets. But I want you to know that every choice I made was born from love for you, love for your birth mother, Elena, and love for the beautiful person I watched you become from afar. Catherine's image smiled, and it was like looking into a mirror across time. You have your mother's courage and your own special kind of grace. Lena would be so proud of the woman you've become. I've left you something that belongs to you. Letter Elena wrote to you before she died. along with her research and the evidence that will finally put Victor Krantz away for good. The video continued for several more minutes, with Catherine sharing memories of watching Sophia grow up, of the pride she felt seeing her graduate from college, start her career, become the compassionate person she'd always hoped she would be. When it ended, both Sophia and James were quietly crying. "There's more," James said, his voice thick with emotion. Catherine left instructions for how to use Elena's evidence to reopen the case against Krantz. "With your help, we can finally get justice for your birth mother and make sure he can never hurt anyone else." Sophia turned from the window, her face streaked with tears, but her expression resolute. "My whole life I felt like I was searching for something I couldn't name, and now I know what it was. I was searching for the truth about where I came from, about the women who loved me enough to sacrifice everything to keep me safe." She looked at James, this stranger who had become the keeper of her history. "What do we do now?" James smiled, and for the first time in 25 years, it felt like hope instead of regret. "Now we finish what Catherine and Elena started. We make sure their sacrifices meant something. And we give you the chance to finally know who you really are, not the identity others created for you, but the person you choose to be with the full truth in your hands." As dawn broke over the city, casting golden light through the precinct windows, Sophia Chun, daughter of Elena Vasquez, protected by Catherine Winters, and now allied with James Morrison, began to understand that sometimes the most extraordinary revelations come not from strangers, but from the people who loved us enough to become strangers so we could be safe. The leftover coffee that had brought them together was long cold, but the warmth of truth, justice, and finally understanding who she really was would last forever.